I want to begin tonight's presentation with a couple of personal stories. These stories may remind you of similar stories in your own history, perhaps even from the history that you lived out today. Someone very wise once told me that a possible way to understand ourselves is to see life as a gigantic narrative where the plot is mostly unknown, but where our personal stories are both the prose and the poetry. And like most prose and poetry, we sometimes create the story very intentionally, and sometimes we just experience its creation. The personal stories that I'm going to share with you are definitely of the second kind. Now, the first story began many years ago in the hospital where my daughter was born. Due to some unfortunate circumstances from a previous pregnancy, my wife was under the care of a medical team specializing in high-risk pregnancy cases. For months, my wife was closely monitored, but thankfully we found ourselves in that hospital room at full term with labor vigorously underway. It was a shared room, and in the next bed was a young woman who was also under the care of the high-risk team because she was pregnant for the first time and because she had a moderate form of cerebral palsy. We'll call her Grace. My wife's high-risk status was most serious during the period leading up to full term, but Grace's high-risk concerns were centered on a possible danger to both child and mother during the labor and delivery process. This was due to the potential for spasms and other complications connected to her cerebral palsy. Now, during the hours leading up to the delivery, the two girls bonded in a way that, frankly, only mothers with children at risk might understand. In our case, everything went well, and we are still blessed to have delivered a beautiful daughter. Grace had some challenges, however, during her delivery, including a temporary stoppage of her breathing. But thankfully, she too delivered a beautiful baby girl, very healthy. However, because of her delivery complications, Grace was moved to another section of the hospital, and before she and my wife could exchange proper contact information, they were discharged from the hospital separately and abruptly. And as a consequence, they lost touch. Now, I know it's difficult to imagine this, but this was definitely in the pre-smartphone and pre-Facebook era. Almost 4 years later, we had just moved into a new home in a new subdivision, and one summer day, I was in the front garage straightening out some stuff. Like I said, it was a new subdivision, and consequently, our street had very little vehicle traffic. But as my back was turned to the street, I heard the metallic sound of a bicycle falling to the pavement, accompanied by sounds of alarm from an adult and crying from a child. I immediately turned to look, and right in front of my house was a small tandem bicycle, equipped with training wheels, oddly enough, laying on its side in the road. Beside the bike was a woman and a little girl, both dirty and scraped, picking themselves up from the road. Ran out to them right away to see if I could help, and as the woman turned to acknowledge me, her eyes grew wide when she saw me. She said, "Fred, is that you?" Well, it was Grace and her 4-year-old daughter. Our families never lost touch again after that.